The Mexican-American War. The untransacted destiny of the American people is to subdue the continent, to rush over this vast field to the Pacific Ocean, to animate the many hundred millions of its people, and to cheer them upward. The Mexican-American War was a defining moment in the relationship between Mexico and the USA. It began on April 25, 1846, and ended February 3, 1848. In the early 19th century, thousands of Protestant Anglo-Saxon Americans had poured into the Mexican territory of Texas. These settlers declared their independence in 1835. So tensions arose between the USA and Mexico as Texas broke off from Mexico and began petitioning the USA for statehood. Mexican leaders warned that annexing Texas could lead to war. However, on July 4th of 1845, Texas legislators agreed to the annexation.
On April 23, 1846, Mexico declared defensive war against the United States. It would defend its territories under attack but not take the offensive. And later that year, on May 13th, the U.S. Congress declared war on Mexico following the Battle of Palo Alto, which was the first major battle of the war. Some other major battles of the war are Battle of Monterrey, Siege of Los Angeles, Battle of Buena Vista, Siege of Veracruz, Battle of Cerro Gordo, Battle of Chapultepec, and Battle of Mexico City.
The occupation of the city by the U.S. marked the unofficial end of the Mexican-American War. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed on February 2, 1848, officially ended the war. Here are some key points about the treaty. Mexico ceded 55% of its territory, approximately 525,000 square miles, to the United States. This included present-day states such as California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. Mexico also agreed to recognize the Rio Grande River as America's southern border. The treaty recognized the annexation of Texas to the United States, which had occurred nearly 3 years before the treaty was signed. The United States paid Mexico $15 million as part of the settlement.
The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo resulted in the United States territory being doubled, making it 100% larger than before. These enormous areas offered plenty of natural resources, including minerals, rich land, and access to the Pacific Ocean. However, these territorial gains reignited debates over slavery. David Wilmot, a Democratic congressman, offered an amendment called the Wilmot Proviso on August 8, 1846. The bill forbade slavery in the new territory, but was unsuccessful in passing, and so the state of Texas was established half slave and half free.
The Mexican-American War saw a phenomenon that is nearly unique in the history of war: soldiers from the winning side deserting and joining the enemy. Thousands of Irish immigrants joined the U.S. Army in the 1840s, looking for a new life and a way to settle in the USA. These men were sent to fight in Mexico, where many deserted because of harsh conditions, lack of Catholic services, and blatant anti-Irish discrimination in the ranks. Meanwhile, Irish deserter John Riley had founded the St. Patrick's Battalion, a Mexican artillery unit that was mostly but not completely made of Irish Catholic deserters from the U.S. Army. The St. Patrick's Battalion fought with great distinction for the Mexicans, who today revere them as heroes. The St. Patricks were most likely killed or captured at the Battle of Churubusco. Most of those captured were later hung for desertion.
One thing united American and Mexican soldiers during the war: misery. Conditions were terrible. Both sides suffered greatly from disease, which killed 7 times more soldiers than combat during the war. Soldiers suffered from a variety of diseases, including yellow fever, malaria, dysentery, measles, diarrhea, cholera, and smallpox. These illnesses were treated with remedies such as leeches, brandy, mustard, opium, and lead. As for those wounded in combat, primitive medical techniques often turned minor wounds into life-threatening ones. It wasn't the most important battle of the Mexican-American War, but the Battle of Chapultepec is probably the most famous one. On September 13, 1847, American forces needed to capture the fortress of Chapultepec, which also housed the Mexican Military Academy, before advancing on Mexico City. They stormed the castle and before long had taken the city. The battle is remembered today for 2 reasons. During the battle, 6 courageous Mexican cadets who had refused to leave their academy died fighting the invaders. Also, Chapultepec was one of the first major engagements in which the United States Marine Corps took part. Marines today honor the battle with the blood-red stripe on the trouser of their dress uniforms. General Lopez de Santa Anna was in command of the army at Mexico City, recognizing that Chapultepec's castle was key to the city's defense. The castle sat atop a 200-foot tall hill used as a luxury residence, and was at the same time a Mexican military academy. Although Santa Anna's total forces defending Mexico City were larger than General Winfield Scott's, he had to defend multiple positions. He did not have enough troops to efficiently protect the southern pathways into Mexico City and Chapultepec Castle. At Chapultepec, General Nicolás Bravo had fewer than 1,000 men and only 7 cannons at his disposal.
At 0800 hours on September 13th, Scott ordered the infantry attack after 3 hours of American bombardment. The Marines and Army units fought their way up in bloody combat against the wall's defenders. Simultaneously, the remainder of soldiers and Marines breached one of the gates to the fortress. By 0900 hours, General Bravo surrendered to the New York Regiment. And in Mexico, the lives of 6 young boys are remembered among the carnage of the war. Students of the Mexican Military Academy, 6 cadets refused to leave Chapultepec when General Bravo finally ordered retreat. And as the Americans overwhelmed the castle, the 6 boys stayed and fought to the death. The 6 Niños Héroes are as follows. Teniente Juan de la Barrera, 19 years old. He was a lieutenant in the military engineers and died defending a gun battery at the entrance to the park. Cadete Fernando Montes de Oca, at 18, also defended the castle from his post and was considered the best shooter from the group. Cadete Agustín Melgar was also 18. A note in Melgar's personal record explains that after finding himself alone, he tried to stop the enemy on the north side of the castle. It also explains he shot and killed one and took refuge behind mattresses in one of the rooms. He died of his injuries and was found dead after the castle fell. Cadete Francisco Marquez, at 13, the youngest casualty. At the time of the battle, he belonged to the 1st Company of Cadets. A note included in his personnel record says his body was found on the east flank of the hill, alongside that of Juan Escutia. There was also a 14-year-old Cadete Vicente Suarez Ferrer. A note in his record reads, killed defending his country at his sentry post on September 13, 1847. He ordered the attackers to stop, but they continued to advance. He shot one and stabbed another in the stomach with his bayonet, and was killed at his post in hand-to-hand combat. He was killed for his bravery, because his youthfulness made the attackers hesitate, until he attacked them. Finally, Cadete Juan Escutia, also around 19, he is a cadet who is said to have wrapped himself up in the Mexican flag and jumped from the roof to keep it from falling into enemy hands, although he'd been accepted into the academy only 5 days prior to the attack. The Mexican-American War had significant implications for both Mexico and the United States. The war also intensified tensions between the North and the South in the United States over the issue of slavery, ultimately leading to the American Civil War.